So good evening, all of you. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this evening's talk by Dr. Malish on student diversity and inclusive education. Just a very brief introduction to Dr. Malish. Dr. Malish is a faculty member at the Ashank Desai Center for Policy Studies at IIT Bombay. He is a former faculty member at the Center for Policy Research in Higher Education at the National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, which is in New Delhi. He holds a PhD in sociology from the Institute of Technology, Delhi. And his teaching and research interests include a very wide range. It includes education policies, higher education, equity, student diversity, student success, and intermediary organizations in higher education. He has completed 2 large-scale national-level studies, diversity and discrimination in higher education in India, which is sponsored by ICSSR, and Student Success and Social Mobility, a study of UGC coaching schemes, which was sponsored by the University Grants Commission. He's published widely. He's the co-editor of the book titled Indian Higher Education Report 2016, Equity, published by SAGE in 2018. He served as editor of the CPRHE, which is the Center for Policy Research in Higher Education of NEPA, research paper series, and member of the editorial board of the Journal of Education Planning and Administration, JEPA, during his tenure at NEPA. He's currently serving as review editor of Frontiers of Education and a reviewer of Springer Higher Education. So it's a pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Malish, and we are privileged to listen to you from the vast experience that you've had in this field. Thank you very much. So I welcome you to start your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Saikia, for giving a nice introduction, giving this opportunity to interact with the teachers of universities and colleges across the country. So I appreciate the effort of the IUC and for organizing such an important talk as part of the MMTC. My talk is focused on student diversity and inclusive education. So my presentation is divided into 2 parts. So today, the day 1, I would like to start with the introduction of global expansion of higher education to provide you the context of higher education expansion and how to approach higher education expansion conceptually. Then I will discuss about what is the scenario of Indian higher education and what is the nature of growth of higher education in India in last couple of years, maybe post-independent India, what is the nature of growth of higher education. Then I will end with the idea of what is the nature of student diversity in colleges and universities in India. So that is the plan. And tomorrow, the day 2, I will engage with the conceptual understanding of diversity and what is the meaning of inclusion. So inclusion can have different meanings. So in the specific context of education, what does it mean by inclusion, and what does it mean by an inclusive education? And finally, I end up the idea: what is the role of teachers, institution leaders, and institution in promoting student diversity and inclusion? So that is a kind of an action point that every teachers will be interested. So before starting the presentation, I would like to make one statement that is regarding normally as a scholars, we all conduct research, we teach and we conduct research. One peculiar characteristics of education, particularly in higher education in our case, is that higher education is a field of research. At the same time, it is the location where we are practicing our professional life. So it is a bit risky. If you are doing a research on agriculture sector, you can make a lot of critical things about that particular sector because you are not part of it. And you can similarly conduct a lot of studies about the other sectors, etc. And you remain as a teacher within a college or university. But when we discuss about the education, and particularly in higher education, diversity, etc., we are talking about a field in which we are a major player. And we are one of the major stakeholders of that particular field. So that makes sometimes it's difficult also to how to deal with the issue of higher education in a group of teachers. With that, the preliminary statement, let me start the presentation. How to look at the education, particularly the higher education. As we know, if you ask your friends, particularly friends, those who studied with you in your school, many of them could not have completed maybe schooling. If they completed schooling, they only few would have gone to the colleges, few could have completed the PhD. So that is because in 20, maybe 25 years back, education in general, higher education in particular, is in a very nascent stage in India, if you look at in terms of number. So in order to understand what is the nature of expansion of higher education, we need a perspective or some kind of a lens to understand the expansion of the education system. In literacy, we will say 100% literacy. In the school education, we want to achieve 100% enrollment in school. But in higher education, particularly in 1960s, 70s, a lot of discussion has happened. How to classify, how to look at the higher education expansion. So during the 60s and 70s, a sociologist called Martin Troe introduced a three-stage classification of higher education that is based on the gross enrollment ratio. I think I'm sure that you are familiar with the idea of an indicator called gross enrollment ratio. So we have been trying in India also to get 100% gross enrollment ratio in school education. But after the 75 years of the independence, we could not achieve 100% enrollment even in our school education. Although we have made substantial progress in school sector, but we could not achieve 100% gross enrollment ratio even in the primary education. And if you look at the statistics, if 100 students join in a class 1, only 70-80 will be coming to the secondary level. Only 50 will be reaching to the higher secondary level. Then those who are completing the higher secondary going to the higher education or post-secondary education. This is the larger scenario. So Martin Troy in 1960 suggested that we can classify higher education development into three stages. That is one is the elite stage, mass stage, and universal stage. In the simplest sense, if gross enrollment ratio is below 15%, according to Martin Troy, that is an elite system of higher education. That means the enrollment of education is low. It also means that the higher education access is narrowly confined to social and economic elite in a particular society. So if you look at the history of university model of education in the world, you can see that from the 11th century to up to the 20th century, the higher education was confined to only the privileged class and the social group, whether it is in India or in the Europe. And at that time, the idea of higher education was to prepare few number of social and economic elites. Their purpose is to pursuit of the knowledge for the sake of knowledge. That is the way the European model of university, including the Bologna University, Oxford, Cambridge, etc. That scenario has begun to change only in the 20th century when Berlin University formed in 1911. So it's a new model of university called a research. That's a different story. I am not getting into the evolution of the university model of education. The point is that in the largest share of existence, the time where university existed, university remained as an elite sector, and it's an elite system. Only few students, few share of the students going to the colleges and universities. So that is the early stage. Then Martin Prof suggests if the gross enrollment ratio crosses 15% mark, we are entering into a new stage called mass higher education system. Mass means more people. This going beyond the typical social and economic elite. So that process, Martin Pro connoted a term called massification. So that's more students are coming into college. That is the idea of a massification. So if GR is between 16 to 50%, according to Pro, we are in a stage of mass higher education. And in 1960s and 70s, at that time, the higher education was just is entering into the stage of massification. They consider that 50% and above means it's already universal. Here, the point is that if you take any other levels of education, primary, secondary, higher secondary, universal means that 100% enrollment. But in higher education at that time, they did not envisage that, okay, there is a need for everybody going to college. That is a big luxury in 1960s and 70s. So that's why
there was a question. There was a question saying that they're not familiar with the GER term. So maybe you could just expand on how GER is calculated.
Thank you so much. So the gross enrollment ratio is actually calculated based on the how many students in the age group of 18 to 23 going to college. If suppose there is 100 students, out of this 100, how many are going to colleges? So the formula is that number of students enrolled in the colleges divided by the total number of students in the specific age group, 18 to 23 into 100. So that means if we say there is a 15% gross enrollment ratio, it means that out of 100, 18 to 23 age group, 15 students are enrolled in colleges and university.
So sir, this is pertaining to the colleges only, not to the schools.
No. I'm talking about the gross enrollment ratio in higher education, not school education. School education is much higher. You have 90% in primary education, 52% in secondary education. I'm particularly talking about the higher education. If it is in a primary education, the age group will be 6 to 14. So that age will differ in the calculation. In particularly in higher education, we calculate gross enrollment ratio as a share of students enrolled in college as a percentage of total number of age cohorts. That means 18 to 23 is the age for the higher education, including the degree and the post-graduation. So how many students are there in that age group? How much percentage of those particular share is actually enrolled in the college? Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. So that is so if it is a 50%, at that time, it considered as a universal system of higher education. So let me come to the one globally what has happened. As you know, 1960s and 70s has witnessed many changes in economy, production process, and social structure, etc., particularly in the developed countries and Western countries. So because of the change in the production process and the role of the change in the technology, etc. So there is a huge demand for technical and knowledge class, that means those who studied in higher education. That actually led to a more demand for higher education in the Western developed countries. So partly is also due to the proliferation of idea of the human capital approach to the education. So that means more education means more productivity. So education is linked to the productivity of the nation. That assumption actually led to the massive increase of students going to colleges and universities in United States, etc. So in the 1960s, the United States entered into a stage of massification. That means by 60s itself, gross enrollment ratio in America was around more than 15%, 15%. That is the meaning of massification there. And later, the Western Europe, England, Sweden, all these European countries, then some of the East Asian countries came in by 80s. Then this continued up to 2000. In the turn of the 21st century, and the expansion became a global phenomenon. So earlier it was confined to North America, that is particularly the US, then the Western Europe, then gradually some part of the Asia. By turn of the century, this massive process of massification became a global phenomenon. That means that the higher education expansion became a part and parcel of almost all the countries across the world. Although there are substantial variation within the US, also there are a lot of variation. For instance, the Harvard University established in 1636, but up to 1970s, that admission is restricted to only for the whites, African Americans, and Hispanics, etc., has been totally excluded from the excluded to the Harvard University admission process. That's a different story. My point is that by the turn of the century, this massification become a global phenomenon. So let's now look into some of the latest data about what is the scenario of higher education expansion across the globe in a different country context. Here you can see that is the data I have taken from the World Bank. In 2010, gross enrollment ratio average across the world, it is 29.6%. And here you can see the high income countries, it was 72.9%. And middle income, it is 25%. Low income countries, that's 8.6%. If you take the geographical region, North America 89.7%, and European Union 65.0%, and Sub-Saharan Africa is the least, 7.9% also. And individual country level, you can see USA 92.6% in 2010. We are talking about the story around 20 years back, sorry, 13 years back. Then China, it was 24.2, Finland 93.4, Greece 103. Do you know why it is 103 in Greece? But why is it possible to have a GR above 100? Why it is so? Any idea? Anybody can answer this question? That will be great. Why GR going beyond 100? What does
you
it
can
mean?
unmute yourself, actually. Okay. Anybody wants to, it'd be good if you all respond, and you can unmute yourself. That is allowed.
Can you hear me, sir?
My question is,
You're audible, Tamal. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, it's possible that people are taking 12 degrees there.
Pardon?
12 degrees means twice they are taking some master degree courses.
Yeah, one possibility could be a dual degree. Another? Any other?
I don't think, I could not guess.
Yeah, because this is a confusion for many people. That's why I thought I can share with you. The reason is that I have discussed earlier, the formula of calculating GR is number of students enrolled divided by the total number of eligible students into 100. So here what happens, if the large number of matured students getting admission in colleges, that means those who are above 23, up to maybe 40 also. In Europe, etc., matured students share a larger share of the enrollment. In India, if somebody at the 40 going for a UG program is considered to be a taboo, but that is not the case in the some of the European countries. So one of the reason for that is maybe more number of matured students may be entering to, that means above the typical eligible age group, maybe attending the colleges. So that's the point. So here, and similarly, you can, then India, it was 17.8% in 2010. And if you take the 2014 data, you will see the difference. So my main suggestion is that if you look at the data 2010 and 2009 data, gross enrollment ratio, we can see that there is a substantial increase in global enrollment in higher education. That means in 2010, it was just 29.6%. It rose to around 38.8% in 2019. So it's a big increase. But if you look at the second one, high income countries, you can see that there is a marginal change. It was around 72.9%. It actually increased to 75. But if you look at the middle income countries, you can see there is a substantial change, 25.0 to 36.0. It also means that most of the Western countries, North America and Western, they already reached an optimal level of higher education enrollment in almost all the developed countries and developed region. Their potential for further expansion is very, very limited. But at the same time, the total number of global students is actually increasing. That increase actually coming from the so-called low-income developing countries like India, China, etc. That's if you look at the China, in 2010, it was 24.2%. That means out of 100, only 24.2% going to colleges or university. But within maybe 10 years of time, if you look at it, there China's gross enrollment ratio increased to 53.8. It means that out of 100, half of the students are going to colleges and university. It was earlier only out of 100, only 1/4 going. Now it is half of the students are going to colleges and university. But in India, we also made substantial progress. But that substantial progress needs to be cross-checked along with the other GR ratio that we have discussed. For instance, in 2010, India's GR was 17.8, but the world average was around 30%. So we are maybe just half of the world average. But in 2019, the world average went to around 38.8%, but India still remaining at the 28.6. The point here is that whenever there is a policy proposal to further expand the education, etc., there is a strong criticism from some corners saying why we are expanding our education enrollment, etc. What is the need for that? The reason is that we consider that we have made substantial progress in higher education. But if you compare with the global average, an average in the middle income countries, etc., the India's higher education expansion need to catch up. So we are already underperformer in terms of the providing access to higher education. Having said so, India's achievement, India's significance in global higher education relies on, now we have 227 million students enrolled in colleges and universities across the globe, 227 million. Out of this 227 million, the 41 million are coming from India. Although our gross enrollment ratio is lower, our share in the global education is very high. It means that out of every one student out of 5 global student is an Indian. So that much is the contribution of the India towards the global higher education enrollment. Okay, then let's look into the expansion of higher education, what has happened over a period of time. So we can see that in 1950s and 51, we have only 27 universities, and our gross enrollment ratio was around 1%. And if you look at the data, there is a gradual incremental change in the number of universities, etc. But you can see a huge change maybe after 80s and 90s. So the number of universities and the enrollment. For instance, 1991, our gross enrollment ratio was 5.9. But within a 10 year of time, our GR increased to 8.1. Then it's a steady increase. Up to currently, we have 27.3 is the gross enrollment ratio in higher education. According to the All India Survey of Higher Education, we have 1,113 universities, and half of them are private universities, and 43,000 colleges, another 12,000 standalone institutions. Standalone means the diploma colleges and the B.Ed colleges, etc. And total enrollment is around 41.3 million. So that means if you look at the numerical strength, this is a big number. But if you take the gross enrollment ratio, we are still lagging behind our global average and many of the developing countries also. Okay. So what has happened after 1990s? So the main reason for increasing demand for higher education is, one is there is after the 1990s, there is substantial progress in the school education. It was partly due to the Education for All movement and Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and Rashtriya Madhyama Shiksha Abhiyan, Right to Education Act. So after 90s, there are a lot of public policy intervention to improve the schooling system in India. As a result of that, we got large number of eligible cohorts who are ready to enter for colleges and universities. That's the one thing. The progress in the schooling is the one important factor for increasing the demand for higher education. And secondly, India has implemented, strictly implemented affirmative action policy. That means a reservation policies in admission in public universities and colleges. That's why, although disparities still exist, there is a gradual reduction of access to disparity in terms of gross enrollment ratio. For instance, if you take the overall gross enrollment ratio, it is 27.1, and the SC it is a 24 point something, and ST it is 18 point. But if you compare this data with the 10 years back, you can see that that gap was much higher earlier. Now the year gap between the overall and the sum of the social group, etc., gradually reducing. It does not mean that it disappeared. It is still there. But point is that it is gradually declining. That gap is declining. So that is largely because of the affirmative action policy. And similarly, after the 90s is the time where India also entered into a new stage of a political imagination and an economic era, globalization, privatization, etc. That also lead the family to realize that higher education attainment is an important thing for their mobility of their children. That's why the families are willing to invest in education for the future growth of their children. That family demand also led to the more demand for higher education enrollment. That is it's also a combined effect. One is that there is a considerable increase in the demand for higher education, and because of the progress in the school education, more number of students are secondary school leaving students are ready. And in the higher education sector, Government of India and the various state government introduced the strictly implemented reservation policy that also contributed to the enhanced number of students from the previously underrepresented groups. But having said so, we should not forget the fact that India's higher education expansion was mainly led by the private parties. That means the private colleges and universities. It's not university, private sector, particularly the private colleges. Although we can say that there is a substantial increase in gross enrollment ratio, the growing number of and growing intrusion of private institution in Indian system also lead to some kind of a distortion, disciplinary distortion, and other kind of distortion in the system. Having said so, we could make a substantial progress in moving towards more equitable kind of a system of educational allocation in India in the last maybe couple of 1 or 2 decades of time. Okay, so for the equity policy, if you look at the, I just mentioned that the state policies, particularly the reservation policies, made a substantial contribution towards the participation of students from different backgrounds, particularly the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, because they were highly excluded from the higher education scenario historically. For instance, in the Institute of Technology, the IITs was supposed to follow reservation policies, but up to 1972, none of the IITs in India enrolled any SC/ST students. The reservation policy was not followed in IITs. Then there is in 1972, there was a committee called Chandi Committee. Then Chandi Committee made some recommendation. Then only the IIT started recruiting the students in their BTech and MTech program. That also only marginal number of students ended. The major share of enrollment from the socially disadvantaged groups actually started taking place after the 2000, particularly after 2005-6. So I'm not getting into the detail. My point is that the state policy has made a substantial role in increasing the participation of the students from the disadvantaged groups. So what are the major strategy, the public policy instruments we have used to improve the equity in education or improve the higher education enrollment? One is the constitutional provision and legislative provision, like the policy of reservation, etc. And secondly, improving the supply condition. So although it is not adequate, the government also has made a substantial contribution to start the new colleges, etc., and increasing the strength of the student strength in some of the colleges, etc. So there is a government has made some major steps in increasing the supply condition. And thirdly, the support to overcome the entry barriers. So entry barriers could be the financial barriers and other, it can be very different varieties of barriers. So the state policies actually intervene to overcome those barriers. For instance, providing monetary support, etc., and giving some fee waiver. If somebody is coming from a poor family, there will be some fee reimbursement scheme. For some students from the SC and ST, they will get some fee reimbursement or fee waiver, etc. These are the supporting support for entry barriers, etc., and some coaching for the students, post-matric scholarship, etc. And other policies are promoting retention and participation. In promoting retention means the first priority is to get the students or bring the students into colleges and universities. So we can provide some kind of incentives, some fee waiver, etc. But once they enter into colleges, we need to ensure that they should be in the system. So that is the policy for retention and participation, providing free book facility, hostel facility, etc. That all are aiming to provide the necessary facilities and conditions for the students to survive and stay in the system. And finally, the student outcome, promoting student outcome. So they were remedial coaching. These are the, although I am not agree with the idea of the remedial, still that idea of providing additional learning input for the student. These are aiming to improve the student outcome. So these are the different ways actually public policy on equity aiming to improve the educational access, educational participation, and educational outcome of students from the socially and disadvantaged background. Okay. So if you look at the history of policy, in 1968 policy, national education policy, we have policy in the sense large level national education policy. We have only 3 policies. One is 1968 policy. That policy came after the Kothari Commission report. Kothari Commission 1964 submitted the report to the nation. That's called Education and National Development. Based on that report, the national education policy was formulated, and that policy actually made Indian education system as a coherent one. Before that, it was a kind of a different state followed different structure. Some of the states have a 2-year degree, some having 3-year degree, some have 4-year degree. That's why National Education Policy 1968 provided a national system of education. The 10+2+3 system, etc. across the country. That is a system up to 10 schooling, then 2 years of post-secondary, then 2 years of higher secondary, then after the higher secondary, then degree for 3 years. So that's the 10+2+3, and there's a 3-language formula, etc. That is the after the independent, there's a first policy that made an important contribution to make Indian education system as a national system with some common elements and features. And in 1986 policy also made substantial contribution. But one thing we can see in both of the policies, particularly in 1968 and 86, these policies were not in favor of expansion of the higher education. So they primarily focus their attention on the improvement of the primary education, secondary education, etc. For instance, if you compile all the major recommendations of the policies and committees and commissions on higher education in last 50 years of time up to 2000, we can see that the major argument is that there is a need to universalize elementary education. That means elementary education up to class 7, 8. It should be universal. Everybody should go to universal, up to the at least the primary elementary education level. And we need to provide more access to the secondary education, 9, 10, 11, 12. And consolidation of higher education. No need for expanding higher education. That is not the goal of the national goal in both 1968 and 86 later committees and commissions, because the committees and commissions generally felt that if you expand the higher education, that will lead to dilution of the quality. So and we don't have the capacity to expand. So that's why higher education should remain as an elite kind of a system. So we did not put much emphasis on an investment on, particularly in the expansion of higher education. Now, after 2000, that scenario has been changed because of the globally, there are a lot of discussion about the idea of an emergence of knowledge economy, and higher education was considered to be one of the backbone of economic production. So many times, many critics say that in education become a sub of a economic policy. So that is a level of significance of education in the economic policy. So because of that, the increased reliance on education, higher education and knowledge in economic production and social progress, there was a need for enhancing and more number of enhancing the student enrollment and having a work age population with qualification, higher education qualification. That is the global knowledge economy is the central force for rapid demand for expansion of higher education in across the world, in world after 2000 and India also. That's why even in a National Knowledge Commission, I think Sam Pitroda chaired a committee in 2005-6. They have submitted a report. They have suggested that we should start 1,500 new universities. That's the first time a public commission is asking for a expansion of higher education. Similarly, in 2000, you know that there is a Birla Ambani committee. They also suggested expansion of higher education. In 2012, there is a committee headed by the N. Narayana Murthy, the corporate participation in higher education. They also suggested that higher education needs to be expanded because industries are growing. For that knowledge economy, in the knowledge industry, we need more people with the higher education qualification and skill. But the remedy suggested by the Narayana Murthy committee is that we should allow the private entities to provide higher education facilities because the state capacity is very limited. So that is the 2012 Committee on Corporate Participation in Higher Education. The point is that only after the 2000, the government of India and its different machinery actually trying to think about and trying to prioritize the expansion of higher education and more enrollment in higher education.
Malish, it may be nice if you briefly outline the concept of equity itself, because I think many people don't think about it.
Yeah. So my point here is that now NEP 2020 planning to enhance our gross enrollment ratio into 50%. So we are going from a 27% to 50% in another 12-15 years of time, 2035. So what will actually happen? So that's why the massification in India actually lead to, according to the theoretically, it will lead to the quantitative and qualitative changes in the system. These changes can be, one is the diversification of study program. New kind of study program will emerge and different type of new institution will emerge. and new funding sources. Earlier, government was the only funding sources. Now the families are actually funding the education and leading to the new modes of delivery. Online modes of learning are coming, distance education modes of learning are gaining more currency, etc. And the last one is a diversity in the student body. So what does it mean by this diversity? Let me take the case of India before coming into the conceptual thing. The first thing, we can see that if you look at the latest data, 2019-20 ICA data and 2010-11 data, you can see that now the total share of students from disadvantaged group, for instance, the SC, it was 11% in 2010-11, it increased to 14%. Similarly, ST 4.4% to 5.6%. In OBC, 27.6 to 37%. So if you look at in an overall way, what we can see that the overall share of the disadvantaged groups in higher education has substantially increased. As a result of that, you can see the overall share of the higher upper caste, so-called the general category, their share has declined from 53.3% in 2010-11 to 34.9%. Here, one point we should not miss out. This decline in share does not mean that there is a declining in the actual number. Their actual number continue to remain as high, but their share has declined because of the large number of other students entering into the universities and college. That it means that there is no loss for the traditional elite families, students from traditional elite families. Their number continue to increase, but their share has declined because of the large number of students from the elite, non-traditional background entering into colleges and university. So here I'm not getting into the details here. My point is that when nature of the more number of students coming to colleges, it leads to changes in the composition of the student body in colleges and universities. So caste composition is one part of that diversity meaning, because earlier you said largely students from the upper social strata. Now the significant share of students from other social strata, OBCs, STs are there, and significant number of women are there. Along with that, a larger number of students now entering into colleges are first generation learner. That means their parents did not undergo any kind of higher education experience. They did not study in higher education. So larger share of or significant share of the newly enrolled students are first generation learners. The second is they are coming from a poor family, economically poor family, a significant share. Many of the parents of those students are employed in agriculture and casual wage labor, etc. And in the case of women, there is a substantial progress because the gender gap is actually disappearing in higher education in India. So in some of the states like Manipur, Kerala, etc., women outnumber men. So that is the scenario in terms of gender. Then large number of students are coming from the rural background. Earlier, mostly students are coming from the cities and the urban location. Now the large number are from rural background, and a good number of students with physical disabilities also coming into college. And more importantly, earlier the students from the English medium schools and private elite private schools are going to the colleges, including the IITs, IIMs, etc. Now you can see that the data says that large number of students are coming from those who are studied in a government school, and that also in one of the Indian languages as a medium of instruction, not necessarily an English medium. It can be Tamil, Maratha, etc., Malayalam, etc. So these are the nature of student diversity. So here the point is that the public policy could succeed in bringing diverse student body to colleges, university. That's why that is reflected in the available student body. There is a huge diversity in social types, economic types, and schooling background is parental education and parental employment and location, etc. There's a huge earlier that was not the case. Even 20, 30 years back, most of the students belong to certain categories from a socially elite, economically elite kind of a student. Now it is truly diverse. At least we take into account the larger education as a whole, that means overall India level. This is an unprecedented scenario in India. So student diversity is a reality. So then the question is what to do with this diversity. If the students are diverse, how to respond to this diversity, and what does it mean by inclusion in a system of student body where large number of students are coming from a disadvantage. So that is the question. I will be discussing that conceptual part in the next day. So now I request you, before starting for the discussion, I request all of you to look into this picture. This is a picture by a UNESCO publication. I have also used this theme in some of my write-up also. So can you please look into this picture and what is the implications for diversity and inclusion based on this picture? So we can have a discussion. So tomorrow I will discuss in detail the meaning of diversity, what are the different ways of looking into the equity, and what are the different dimensions of equity, and what is the role of teachers, institutions, and institutional leaders in institutionalizing equity.
Malish, there are two questions in the chat. One is from Professor Radhakrishnan, who asks, now the question is the higher education college benefit for future life now that there are more ways to earn money than wasting time in higher education? Do you want to comment on that?
Is the higher education benefit for the future life? Now there are more ways to earn money than wasting time. This argument, although there is no guarantee that if somebody is educated, does not mean that they will be getting a good job or economic prosperity. But if you are not going to college, that future is crystal clear. So chances are zero. But if you are educated, your chances are very high. But at the same time, it is true that going college does not guarantee the economic mobility, okay, job, etc. But not going to college means that the possibility is zero.
Sir, okay, why I asked this question was, okay, for the last year, I was working for empowerment of SC/ST students, and we even gave chances for them to have free education for what PSC kind of exams. And okay, we even went to their homes, and even we tried to, after 12th, okay, we have even given them opportunity for joining for various courses, but the students are not willing. So even if it is free, they are not coming. So the point is, okay, is the college education, can it be beneficial for them to earn money in their future? Otherwise, okay, they don't come. Even if you're speaking about other communities, no problem. But okay, for SC and SC, I know. See, I am a first generation learner, but and okay, I try to support the students. Then I found that okay, it's kind of waste. Means okay, a resource person is there to give free education, but our people means okay, the students are not coming. So that's why I said, okay, see, our higher education, the education is not giving them a job. Then, okay, see, they go with their mobile and earn the money. So all sorts of nonsense is happening. So that's what that's the point which I wanted to mention. Okay.
Yeah, this I understood your question, and what you're saying also is crystal clear to me. My only point is that on what basis you are saying? Because some anecdotal experience, I understood that your experience saying, but on what basis you are saying because of education, nobody from the SC and STs are getting benefited. So what is the basis for that statement? So we need some kind of an authentic kind of a source to make a statement like that. And second question is that it's a free education, I agree. If you look at the history of education in India, 1947, it was a free education. Up to 1990s, entire education in India mostly was a free education. Only public institution existed at that time. So entire education was free. And who got the benefit from that? So nobody has to ask the question of the wastage, etc. And for your own clarity, I can share you something. In 1945, there was a committee. That committee, Radhakrishnan Commission. I am sure you are aware about the Radhakrishnan Commission. So Radhakrishnan Commission is the first commission in India, the University Education Commission. So they went to each colleges, including the Patna University, the oldest universities, etc. Then they came back and reported in their final report saying the pass percentage in those universities actually just 30%. That means 60 to 70% of the students are failing, even in 1945. But nobody asked a question that why it happened. Even in 1940s, who are the people at that time, 1940s? Who are the students? What will be their background? They're all from a upper social strata. And similarly, you can take another group in engineering colleges in India. In some of the states like Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, 90%, in all over India also, 90% of the engineering seats in India is in the private sector. But even in the 2005 onwards, McKinsey, NASCOM, etc., saying our engineering students are not employable. If it is mostly done by a private institution, I'm sure SCST students' share will be very less. There are a lot of data, mostly from the landed community and the upper, socially and economically upper strata is going to those kind of colleges. Their quality is also poor. So that is an issue of how you approach the problem. The point is that you are talking about a different kind of a social group, a one social group that has availed an education facilities for of a 3-4 centuries, maybe many centuries, and somebody coming to colleges as a first generation learner. But other group, they have historically benefited from the education. For instance, some of the teachers suggest that, I will stop by this. Some of the teachers suggest that we are providing a lot of help and service, etc. But we cannot help beyond, because this is not our job. Our job, this is the problem of their schooling. Students are not performing well because of their schooling background. So that is the one argument shared by teachers in colleges. Then we went to the school. Then the school teacher saying they are not performing well. That is not because of the school. It is the responsibility of the family. Then you can go back to the family. Then you can ask the question. Then they will have another answer. So there is a shifting of responsibility from one person to another. So there are a lot of things that if you provide the opportunity, the point is that whether we are providing adequate opportunity by understanding the specific needs of the student. That is the first thing. The other things are secondary.
Actually, just to add to what Dr. Malish has said, Professor Radhakrishnan, is that if you look at the average salary, monthly or annual salary, although, getting a higher degree doesn't guarantee a job, but the average salary compared to, say, with high school or below to a master's degree actually more than doubles. So there's a systematic increase in the average earning of a person with the level of education. It's a very positive correlation. So it's important to provide opportunities. Everybody may not get a job, but it is important to provide the opportunities of education so that they're at least capable of getting a job. And there's definitely an increase in average salary with the level of education.
Okay.
Malish, there's one question. Can you mention about the source of data from where the data are taken? This is the All India Higher Education reports, right? Mostly.
Sir,
Hello?
same, sir. So because data source are not mentioned there,
He wants to know the source of your data which you showed.
My data coming from the ISHA data and World Bank data.
Okay, there are a couple of more questions on the chat which I will. Okay, I'll just pick one or two. There's one on distance education. Does it mean that good students go for distance education to keep equity? I'm not sure what that question means actually, because but do you want to respond to it, Tamal Sarkar?
Sir, my question is actually here shows the physical infrastructure, and
Hmm.
there are some benches, okay, and students are there. Now, in first cases, all are getting the same physical infrastructure, and second cases, the physical infrastructure is changing. So I consider that this is maybe good college, some medium college or no college, like that.
No,
sir.
in the last line, he's trying to illustrate or highlight the difference between equality and equity.
But that I am not understanding, sir, how this equity and this bench concept.
Bench concept, actually, maybe I should let Dr. Malish answer, okay? But I can add to it later. Do you want to highlight the difference between equality and equity? That's usually a
I thought
misconception.
I will discuss it tomorrow, but now, okay, for the time being. So I'm sure some of you have seen this picture. So in India, when we discuss about the equality, equity, etc., there is a lack of clarity on the issues of, because they use it simultaneously and interchangeably also. But these are the two different things. The point is that equality is a goal to be achieved. That's an outcome parameter. Equity is a process oriented. So we are making some intervention in the process in order to get a outcome. So that's why if we are just providing something, an opportunity, simply giving something, that's a ensuring that just an equality. But equity in education actually means that to provide some support system, etc., in order to fully benefit from that education process. So, for instance, if there is 100 students in a classroom, and there is something called, there is a distribution of in the one class of 100 students. So teacher is allocating his or her time, equal time with everybody. But there are 20 students there. They need some kind of an additional support. For instance, maybe understanding some mathematical concept, etc. So teacher may organize one separate special class for those students. So according to the equality principle, here what happens? For every student, it should be equal. That is the equality principle. But here, 20 students getting some additional timing. So they are getting more. This more is actually this provision of the more. In order to get an equality in outcome, that is the equity. So simply providing, suppose if you are providing, suppose there are two group of students, somebody from a family, for instance, in the case of a sports, etc., somebody from a reasonably rich, they get a good amount of meat, milk, etc. They'll be good in running. And somebody from a poor family, they are not getting adequate the nutritional food, etc. So equality means we give equal amount of food supplement to both the person. But equity means that we recognize there is a difference in the initial endowment. Somebody coming from in a family with a lot of food support available, and other families coming from a starving kind of a family. So we have to provide extra food to that particular group of students. So that is the equity. So the principle is that if you, in the case of learning as a teacher, if you are providing equal inputs to everybody, it does not lead to equal outcome. The reason is that the initial endowment of the students are different. That's why there is a study in 2006 by Anurag Krishna. So he did a comprehensive study of the IIT and IIM the students, and his quantitative analysis suggests that if a if a person studied in a rural school, irrespective of the caste background, if somebody studied in a rural school, his or her chances of getting into JE and get an admission in BTech is 0. The reason is that now it has been changed, but earlier, most of the coaching industry is located in the urban location. So either you should be in a urban area, that area, or you should be in, your family should be in capacity to stay in that place or giving a hostel accommodation, etc. Those people alone will be getting that the facility. So if a student is studied in any rural school, whatever the class, whatever the caste, his or her chances of getting into IIT is 0. So this is the meaning of the privilege. And many times the people do not recognize the the role of privilege and their endowment, how that endowment plays a crucial role in their achievement. For instance, you take any of the leading IIT and take a survey. How many students are from non-English medium? Majority of those the faculty members from the leading, I'm talking about the leading because I am part of it. All the students actually they studied in an English medium schooling. So if you are in a Maratha medium or in a Hindi medium, your chances of getting into an IIT is 0. So that is the larger problem. So that's why we need to first, if you want to focus on equity, we should understand there are some privileges people are enjoying. I'm not talking about the discrimination here. So that's why I ask you to look at the picture. This is the typical picture shared almost everywhere about differentiating equality and equity. But there is a substantial and a crucial problem in this picture. So I'm asking some of you to look at this picture and reflect on.
Thank you, sir, for explaining. So actually, I got the thing wrong. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, the bench over here is just a metaphor, You shouldn't look at it as a solid thing over there.
No, I was looking as a physical infrastructure.
No.
Nothing. Okay.
Okay.
Hello,
I think
sir.
take the last
Hello, sir.
question. Oh, sorry.
Hello,
Go
sir.
ahead.
Can I
Go-
ask one question?
Yes,
Please.
sir.
Okay, so actually, I wanted to ask you one question that, as you said that the NEP, it focuses on increasing the gross enrollment ratio by 50% by 2035. Sir, can you put your insight on this, that how NEP will be helpful in helping to increase the gross enrollment ratio?
Yeah, there are a lot of permutation combination for this question. So I'm not getting into the details of that point. My primary point in discussing that point, earlier policies, whether it's in 1968 or 86 and revised program of action 1992, they were all deadly against the further expansion of higher education. This is the first time a national policy document actually favoring higher education expansion and putting a target like 50% by 2035. If you look at the general pattern of gross enrollment ratio in India, even without any governmental effort, it will reach to 50% in another 15 years of time. So almost. But how that will contribute to inequality in the system, that is the place where government needs to intervention. Now, the problem with the gross enrollment ratio, there are some problem associated with the GR also. GR actually take into account the overall, either state level or national level, but it conceals some of the crucial information as far as equity is concerned. What are the crucial information? We say that there is a increase in GR and each of the social group getting increase in GR. For instance, women outnumber in some of the state in enrollment and their gap is already closed. So equal number of men and women going to colleges and university according to the GR calculation. But the problem is that where these women are going. You look at the IITs, only 15 to 18% are women. They're not in the so-called elite engineering colleges in India. So they are mostly confined to some of the discipline, like the maybe science courses are there, but engineering they are largely excluded, and they are largely confined to home science, some of the humanities subject, etc. So this means that we are not going to have a good number of science and technology professionals from the women. So similarly, if you look at the SC and STs also, you can see that they are largely confined in arts, science, and humanities. Their enrollment in professional courses, including the engineering, medicine, law, etc., is very, very poor. So GR actually conceals these nuances. So that's why at the one level, GR is a good measure, but we need to dissect that GR, then we will be able to see the larger context of exclusionary mechanism. So there is a saying that something called effectively maintained inequality. So that means now everybody get a feel that, okay, I am also going to college. But if you go to Lady Shri Ram College in maybe in Delhi or IIT Bombay, your opportunity to getting a good job is very higher. But if you are studying in a government college in Tripura or in a less selective, prestigious government aided college in somewhere in Raigad, your chances of getting into higher studies and job is very less. So in India now, what is happening? There is some kind of an institutional stratification is deepening. There are few number of top colleges and including the LSR College, New Delhi, St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, Presidency College, Calcutta, and etc. Cotton College in Assam, etc. But a larger number of students actually studying in a affiliated colleges in the country, they do not have any resources. There is no teachers. So that is the biggest problem. And for instance, in IIT, keep on telling the IIT experience, IIT perform very well in global ranking also. But IIT Bombay annual budget is 800 crore. But university in Calicut, their annual budget is 20 crore. So there is a huge difference. So for somebody said 80 crore budget and it's 20 crore. So this allocation of the resources, for instance, if you take the national allocation, around 1 lakh crore rupees is the total allocation for higher education. So larger share going to for the IITs and centrally funded institution, IIT, IIMs and NITs. In the rest of the money go to the UGC. UGC will give that money to the central university. So the colleges and universities, actual places where the larger number of the disadvantaged groups are studying, they are not getting adequate funding. They are running in a makeshift kind of a classroom without any technology facilities, without any permanent teachers. These are the problems. So there is a huge difference in the allocation of resources in a different kind of institution.
Okay, sir, but in whatever reply you gave, I do agree with you. But as you are saying that related to funding, when the issue is coming and the already established institutes are getting good funds and they are having that high placements, then what about the affiliated colleges? Then in this scenario, do you really think that NEP is going to sort out this problem?
No, NEP, nobody disagree. Because inclusive education is needed. So what are the roadmap for that? There is some lack of clarity. What actually we should do to promote actually things. Otherwise, everybody agree with the policy proposal saying it should be an inclusive education. So what does it mean by inclusive education? How to make an inclusive system? So in 1960s onwards, we have been discussing that 6% of the GDP should be spent for education. But still we are spending around 3.5 to 4% of the GDP on education. So we could not go beyond 4% so far. So lot of proposals and lofty goals are okay, but as a policy, how to go achieve that goals, it's a bit tricky.
That's what the things that I'm saying, because deciding some policies on the paper somewhere sitting at higher authorities, and at the grassroots level, sir, it is not that much easy. That is a major problem for the colleges which are being established in rural areas, particularly, where it's very hard for them to fetch admissions. And when NEP is saying that is the percentage of placements will surely increase, so these two things are actually contradicting the fact that in rural areas the condition is quite worsened, because just seeing IITs and IIMs and comparing the every resources or the placements or the facilities what these higher education institutes being established at such a high level in the country, and comparing them with the colleges which are there in the tribal and rural areas, and having the same output from both the sides is really what I feel is a big question, sir. So at present we just see wait and watch policy should be there at for NEP, what I think, because no one is getting me a answer or solution to these things, because all the examples which you have also given, they are all IITs and IIMs, but what about the affiliated colleges in rural areas? And India being a diverse country, and there are many states with such which are facing such problems, then the problem of employability will remain to some extent. No such policy will be there. Just on paper it's very easy, but when it comes to implementation on the grassroots level, it is really very hard to do it. That is the thing what I wanted to say you, sir. Thanks a lot.
I fully agree with your point. My point is that there is a lot of what to say misunderstanding about the role of national government and state government. In fact, if you look at the expenditure of education, state government expenditure, I'm asking this question instead of answering. Do you have any idea if there is a sharing of cost between state and national government? What will be the share of the national government in education expenditure in India? Do you have make any guess? How much money national government is spending for education out of 100?
Might be 50% to guess something, sir.
50%. Okay. Anybody else?
Sorry, can you please repeat the question?
No, my question is that, so government spends money. Government means the national government and state governments. So what is the share of the national government out of 100? What will be the share of the national government?
So I think around 3%.
Huh?
3%.
3%. Okay.
No, for central government, it should be definitely greater than 50.
50.
Because they have to run IIT. Maybe 90 ratio 10. Central versus state.
Yeah, since we are not familiar, there is nothing wrong. So the contribution of the national government is only 15%, 15. 85% of the government spending is coming from the state governments. But the role of state in deciding the national policy is very limited. The policy will be decided by the national government. They spend only 15%. That 15% go to IITs and central universities. And 86% of the students are studying in a affiliated colleges coming under the state government purview. And they are spending 85% of the total budget, but they do not have any say. For instance, Tamil Nadu has already reached 50%. India's GR goal is 50%. Tamil Nadu has already reached 50%. Delhi almost reaching 50%. Kerala around 40%. So what is the goal for this Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Delhi, etc.? So that point is that there is a need for involving a federal values in an education policy and planning. That is currently lacking in the educational scenario. Now everything is decided mostly by the national government without giving much say for the state government, who are the major player in the education, higher education. But in US, etc., the state actually doing there is nothing but a national policy. Mostly the state governments do. That means California state, they are the major stakeholder. But in India, the national policy means that will be decided by the national government, and there is no role for the state to, no role in the sense, limited role for the state. That also a big problem. They're not trying to understand the actual, what is actually happening in the real Indian colleges and university. So because under the government of India, only IIT, Delhi University, IIM, NIT, all the colleges in the country actually are coming and affiliated to state university. None of the national central university have an affiliated colleges except Delhi University. Delhi University have a constituent college. Otherwise, central university means say unitary university, JNU only. Central University Hyderabad only. And our what to say, Central University of Karnataka, that Gulbarga, that's a place. That is not the case with Osmania University. Osmania University means 1,000 colleges are affiliated. That Osmania University. If any of Jaipur University, it's a state university. So there are 700 colleges affiliated to that. So these are the main players in the education in terms of enrollment, etc. But they have lesser say in the decision making in the education sector.
Sir, I would like to add this. These facts which you had shared, these are really very eye opener. Then why the persons who are very highly qualified, highly professional people, why and at the state level they are putting a say, they are putting a word to have their contribution in this policy making, sir. It is not a problem of just one state when we are saying that the central government is having a share of 15% and each of the state is having of 85%. Then why not these things are happening at the broader end, like an intellectual person like you is sharing in a group of 20 to 25 people like us? Then why the such things are not being documented and provided to the higher authorities to make a change? Because sir, NEP implementation, and that is bringing such a lot of chaos, and what to do next is really a big question. And in such a scenario, if the state government is not having any say, then how will things be smoothened? That is again a big question, and some things need to be done in this direction. If not in time, then the students are really being experimented on different platforms. That is the thing what is happening with education at present, because education is a very important part in any country's development. And if this thing is happening, then do you really think, sir, that is going to be a fruitful decision?
No, I have no answers to these are valid points. So I have no direct answers to, because this is a policy, is a political decision. And that political decision means the way they view the society and the social system actually reflect in their policy thing. And one problem is that if everybody agree with the policy, everything is okay. So many of the things are like that in policy. Everybody agree. That's not okay. We need an inclusive education. Nobody against it. Since 1968 onwards, we are talking about inclusive education. Now also saying inclusive education. So if you're producing a policy text simply saying inclusive education, that is not enough. So we need some kind of a roadmap, some kind of strategies, how to achieve that goal. So that we require, for instance, in colleges now, at least MMTC taking a lead. Earlier, in a school, if you want to teach in a school, a teacher needs to, a person needs to undergo a B.Ed or BLEd, etc. But if you complete a PhD, you can directly teach in colleges and university without even knowing what is pedagogy. So these are some of the issues and challenges government should address. And once you join, and what are the incentive system? For instance, our promotion, etc., are determined based on the publication. Only publication matters. Whatever we teach, whatever extra service support we provide to the student, that will not come in our promotion time. Promotion time will only look into the number of publications. So there are a lot of issues with the our incentive system and opportunities for continuous professional development of our teachers, etc. These are some of the issues we need to give more attention. But unfortunately, those kind of serious issues are actually getting lost. For instance, language is one of the important issue in India, whether one agree or doesn't agree. Because students are coming from a non-English medium background, but higher education mostly in English medium education. So how to address this problem? For instance, in JNU, they started a new center called Center for Language Empowerment. So that center provides English language classes for those who need it. So anybody who is interested to improve their language, they can join their English language course, etc. These are the different ways to provide support system for the students. But now government knows what they are saying. We can start engineering college, engineering, medical, etc. in regional language, so-called Marathi, Tamil, etc. My point is that if everybody is going to Maratha medium engineering, there is no problem. If everybody is going to Tamil medium medical education, I am okay. But only the disadvantaged groups are going to Maratha medium medical, then there is a serious issue.
Malish, there are two interesting questions from Gurudat Gaur, who enjoyed your talk and he said it's a wonderful talk. One is, what is the role or responsibility of an individual as a teacher towards equity and inclusion? And the second part to his question is, private institutions acquire the students mostly irrespective of the social background, as there is a challenge of sustainability for them. What can be done in the direction as it will affect the inclusion and equity goal? I think both the questions are relevant, and particularly with trying to get a GER of 50% and with very little state support or public support, either stagnant or decreasing in real terms, private players are going to play an increasing role. So I think both the questions are very relevant and important. And would you like to comment on them?
Yeah, some of the things I will discuss tomorrow. What teachers can do, definitely I will discuss. As far as the private the sector is concerned, the private sector is one of the major contributor of dilution of quality in education. Normally, but we don't discuss much. Although in some of the sectors like engineering, we discuss, but medical we will not discuss much. Pharmacy will not discuss much. So only in the case of private self-financing college, your ability to pay only matters. Even leave about the equity concern, if only the ability to pay is the only consideration to get a admission, that actually has a lot of implication on the quality. So that is but we normally don't discuss that part much. But mostly we discuss, because what will happen if a reservation policy is followed in the public university. But we have no problem. In large number of students are low quality students are going to engineering, medical, they are coming as a professional, so we don't find much problem. So this is a perceptional issue. But now if you look at the data, around 69% of the students are enrolled in the private colleges. 69%. That is 70% are in private colleges. They are enrolled in private colleges. So there is a huge issue of quality concern in that. So that many places, the political leaders is the people behind the medical education in some of the state, etc. There's a nexus between politics, business. That's actually negatively affecting the quality issues in education, higher education.
So anyway, some of these aspects, I think, Malish, you're going to discuss tomorrow. So any other questions you might have? Because what the questions I see in the chat are either comments or things which Dr. Malish has already addressed. I think one of the important things which I'd like to mention is that Dr. Malish showed that slide of the increase in proportion from what I would call the reserved or less privileged categories. and higher caste, you can see, has come down to about a third, and less privileged to 2/3. But when you look at the faculty, it is the other way around, that
Yeah.
most of the faculty are from the privileged classes.
Yeah.
So in terms of actually promoting equity and inclusiveness, it is absolutely important to sensitize this section of the population about the importance of inclusiveness, to actually have social justice and progress for all in the communities. So that is an additional challenge, because the diversity which is required at the higher levels still leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
And
I fully agree with you. Earlier, in maybe 20, 30 years back, students are homogeneous, teachers are homogeneous. They both belongs to same kind of a socio-economic background. But now students are diverse, but teachers remains to be the old homogeneous category. So that is the conflict now exists in colleges. But if you take the school also scenario is almost same. So if you want to blame actually the problem is the school education, then who should you blame? That's the question. It's the teachers. Who are our teachers? Teachers in school education mostly come from the which category of the society. So so it's not simply we cannot blame. So this is a larger question of equity that I will discuss some of the part tomorrow. So today I thought that to provide the global picture and where India stands and some of the basic information. Then tomorrow I can go deep into the conceptual category of what does it mean by diversity and how to promote diversity, what is to be done, etc. But at the outset, I would like to say policy can make intervention or state can make intervention to bring students to the colleges. The state can, through their policy intervention, they can create demand for education. That's the one, and that will lead to the diversity in the student body at the entry level. But there, the baton has to be handed over to the teachers and institutional leaders. Now it is the responsibility of the teachers and institution to ensure that adequate opportunities are provided to these students. I'm saying that adequate opportunities are provided. If somebody is not able to catch up with that, that's okay. But whether we are providing an adequate opportunity for those who have historically denied educational experience. So that's why I'm telling you very frankly, if you take any leading top university in India, you can see the faculty member sector, there can be some kind of a connection. There's some history. Very rarely people coming from a first generation to become a professor in a top colleges in our country. Either their parents have been a government employee or maybe a professor parent, etc. So that is crystal clear. The data is available, is crystal clear. But we are not ready to acknowledge that privilege actually determine one's mobility. That is a problem.
Okay, Dr. Malish, thank you for a very sort of stimulating talk.